Hello, everybody. This is Will Scarboro. I'm pulling a video out of the archives that I recorded some time ago, but never finished, never posted on YouTube until now. This is my stop-by-stop tour of the Hereford Cathedral organ, Father Willis instrument, produced by Lavender Audio out of England. Kind of a follow-up to the Salisbury stop tour, which has proven to be very popular. And so I'm really happy to now finally be able to put this video out to you guys to enjoy the Hereford organ, which is one of my favorite organs in Hauptwerk. So without further ado, here is my stop-by-stop review of the Hereford Cathedral sample set. Enjoy. It comes in 3 different volume sets. The smallest is volume 1, and the complete organ is volume 3. And the set we're going to be using today is actually the volume 3 XL, which is the special one with a few little extra features that I'll mention in just a moment. But the Hereford Cathedral organ is a Father Willis organ. It was built by Henry Willis and Sons in 1893, and had some subsequent work done over its history. Most notably in 1933 by his grandson Henry Willis III, and then more changes in 1978 by Harrison and Harrison. So, like I mentioned a minute ago, the Volume 3 XL is the complete instrument with a few extra little things. The extra little things are, first, that the key compasses are extended. The actual organ has 58-note manuals and 30-note pedal board, and in the extended organ that is extended to 61-note manuals and 32-note pedal. Also, the choir organ is enclosed, which it is not enclosed in the original instrument, and some of the stops in the solo that have 16-foot extensions are given their own stop knobs, and also a few other little mechanical things and miscellaneous things. So we're going to begin with the great organ. We're going to go through the organ by tonal family, starting with the diapasons. So the great organ on this instrument has 3 8-foot diapasons, with the number 3 being the most gentle. So here is the 3rd open diapason. Nice gentle diapason tone. The number 2 is a little more fuller. And the number 1 is the fullest. Together. foundational sound. And it's not absolutely not necessary to use the first diapason necessarily with these. You can reserve the first diapason for use with the reeds if you wish. And that's generally what I do, or when I need a little bit more prominent diapason tone. In addition to the 8-foots, there's also 2 4-foot principals, the number 2 being the most gentle. And then the number 1 being the more assertive. And you can mix these as you wish. Here's the number 2 principal with the number 3 diapason. And here's the number 2 open diapason with the number 1 principal. And here are the 3 8-foot diapasons with the 2 4-foot principals. There's also a 16-foot double open diapason. And to complete the chorus, there's a 2 2/3 12th. And a 2-foot 15th. So we can add those together. Put the first diapason with that. Now, as far as mixture stops, there are 2 mixtures on the grate. The first mixture is the original mixture from 1893. It's a 3-rank mixture with a tierce in it, and it's more for use with the reeds, but you can definitely use it with the rest of the diapason. So here is that 3-rank mixture. Much later in the organ's history, Harrison and Harrison added a 4-rank quint mixture, and here's what that sounds like with the diapason chorus. And here are all of the diapason stops with the mixtures together. nice chorus. Very nice chorus. It's the most predominant on the organ. And those are all diapason stops. So if we move from the great to the swell has a slightly less powerful abbreviated chorus. Here's the 8-foot open diapason on the swell. Now the swell organ is somewhat remote at Hereford, and that accounts for some of the gentleness of that stop, and most of the stops in the swell. So it would be more comparable to the 3rd open diapason on the great. The actual pipes in the swell are probably closer to the 2nd diapason in scaling, but just due to the distance, they come out sounding more like the 3rd diapason. Also in the swell, there's a 4-foot principal. And a 2-foot 15th. So here are those 3 stops together. And the mixture in the swell is a 3-rank tierce mixture, exactly like the one in the great organ. On the choir, we have another abbreviated chorus, and here's the choir open diapason. The 4-foot in the choir is a Gimshorn. And the mixture in the choir is an addition added by Harrison and Harrison, a 3-rank quint mixture. There are no diapasons in the solo organ, so we're going to move right to the pedal organ next. And the pedal organ has its own complete chorus of diapason stops. The 16-foot open diapason actually pulls part of itself from the great manual. The lowest 12 notes are from the great. Those are open metal pipes. There's an 8-foot principal. And a 4-foot 15th. And then to cap off that ensemble, there's a 4-rank mixture. So here are those stops all together now. Also in the pedal organ are the wooden open bass pipes, and that is actually 2 stops. It's the 16-foot open bass. And the 32-foot double open bass. Those are probably barely audible to you, but they are definitely felt. So here are all those stops together. And just to cap this section, we'll play all of the diapasons together on the organ in a brief passage. Attention from the diapasons, we'll move on to the flutes now. And the great organ has a small complement of flutes, starting with the 8-foot stopped diapason. Very gentle little stop. Its counterpoint is, or counterpart rather, is that 16-foot pitch, the 16-foot bourdon. Fuller than the stop diapason, has a very nice tone to it. Of a different class of flute, we have the clarabelle flute. I have to admit that I'm not really very fond of that particular stop. I think it's a little bit too thick for my taste, and I think I would have preferred to have a little bit more clarity in the tone, more of a traditional harmonic flute. But it's a decent stop for its type. There's also a 4-foot flute, which works better with the clarabelle flute than the stop diapason, just because it's louder. We turn our attention to the swell organ. There are a couple of flutes in the swell. There's a stop diapason, and there's a 4-foot Liblich flute. And here those two are together. Very nice, but somewhat distant because of the location of the division. The choir organ has a nice complement of flutes. There's a lovely little 8-foot Liblich Cadet. And there's a 8-foot clarabelle flute. 4-foot flute is a Liberlich flute. And there's a 2-foot Spitz flute. There's also 2 mutations, a 2 2/3 Nazard and a 1 3/5 tierce. A little out of tune. The one stop that you get with the XL set that you don't get with the regular set is the 16-foot Liberlich bourdon on the choir. This was a stop that was on the original organ, but was removed and does not appear on the actual instrument as it exists today. And you can also combine these stops together to make a cornet. The solo organ also has a couple of flutes. There's a 8-foot harmonic flute. There's a 4-foot concert flute. And there's a 2-foot hole flute. Combine all those together. And they also make nice little solo voices. In the pedal we have a set of flutes. There's a 16-foot bourdon. There's an 8-foot stopped flute. And there's a 4-foot open flute. Here are those 3 stops together. If we turn our attention from the flute family to the strings, there's only a few strings on this organ. There are no strings on the great organ, so we can start with the swell. And the swell has a very gentle little solicinal. And to that we can add the Vox Angelica. We get a very nice, gentle celeste. Very beautiful. Somewhat soft for what you might expect for swell strings, but still very nice. Also on the swell is a 16-foot contragamba. choir organ doesn't have any strings to speak of. The only thing that's somewhat close to that is the 8-foot Dulciana. On the solo organ, we have another set of strings, a bigger set of strings too, with the 8-foot viola da gamba. And to that we can add the voix celeste. And there are no string stops in the pedal. So that takes us through the flues now and into the reeds. And we're going to look at the reeds in the two subclasses. First the solo and imitative reeds, and then the chorus reeds. So there are only a few places where you can find the solo and imitative reeds in this organ, and one place you can find that is on the swell organ. The swell organ has a very gentle oboe. The swell organ also originally had an 8-foot vox humana, but that was changed over the years and is now a 16-foot Dulcian. But it's a very gentle Dulcian and not kind of what you would expect to hear. Very gentle little stop, and actually it combines with the oboe quite nicely to make a little quiet reed chorus. It sounds like it's being played with the swell shutters closed, but it actually isn't. And so you can see one of the problems with the swell organ and its placement. I generally don't use the Dulcian that much, and I don't use the oboe at all as a solo voice simply because it's just too soft. But there are plenty of other solo reed options in this organ, so it's not really necessary. It's not missed that much. The main area we have the solo and imitative reeds is in the solo organ. And one of the sets that we have on the solo organ is this very beautiful clarinet stop. I'm going to put some accompaniment full stops ready so we can kind of play some solos against it. This is the clarinet. tremolo with that too. The solo reeds on this sample set are not so not as bad as the solo reeds in the Salisbury organ for use with the tremolo, because they don't have nearly as many wonky notes as the solo reeds do when you use the tremolo at Salisbury. So it makes them a little more desirable in that regard. Now there's also a unique thing about these solo reeds is that they have a 16-foot extension that was added later, and one of the reeds that has that is the clarinet. And on the actual organ, that is controlled by a separate stop which drops the compass of that stop to 16-foot pitch. But in the XL sample set, that 16-foot stop is actually on a separate knob, so you can kind of mix them together here. So here's this 16-foot clarinet. It's the same clarinet we just heard, but with a 16-foot octave. And here's the 16 and 8 together. You can get cute little things like that out of these stops. Another stop that we have is the orchestral oboe. And here that is the tremolo. There are a few notes to look out for on the tremolo, but generally it's alright. And the orchestral oboe also has its own 16-foot extension. And here those are together. The good thing about the XL set is that on the original organ you can't mix these stops together. You couldn't, for example, use the 16-foot clarinet with the 8-foot orchestral oboe or vice versa, because you'd have to activate the 16-foot control, which would drop both stops to that pitch. But since on the XL organ those stops have their own knobs, you can mix and match however you please. So here's one example of that. Here is the 16-foot clarinet and the 8-foot orchestral oboe. You get nice little combinations like that. The one other orchestral stop that is on the solo organ is the cor anglais. And the cor anglais is a free reed stop. And I don't know the history on it specifically, but I believe it's a French import that was imported by Willis. goes with the tremulant. We're going to save the tuba for the end, as it's worth waiting for. So next I'm going to move on to the chorus reeds. The great organ has its own set of chorus reeds. Here is the 8-foot great trumpet. Is the 16-foot double trumpet. And lastly, here's the clarion. So here those are all together. Just to show you how that adds to the diapasons, I'm going to put the diapason chorus on here. I'm going to leave off the 4-rank quint mixture and just use the original Willis mixture. So here is the diapason chorus without the reeds, and then I will add the 3 reeds with that. See that adds significantly to the grandeur of the great organ. Now, on the swell organ, as I've been talking about the swell organ and its remoteness, one of the things that the remoteness of that division does not affect is the 3 chorus reeds. They're practically the only stops that really can stick out there. And we begin on the swell with the swell trumpet. And here is the 16-foot double trumpet. To the great, and then to top it off, a 4-foot clarion. So here are those stops. Just for a quick comparison, here's the swell reeds versus the great reeds. So you can hear they're similar tonally, but different just from a loudness perspective because of the placement of the pipes. Now the choir organ has a lone 8-foot trumpet, which is a demure stop. It's a bit more gentle trumpet. Doesn't really contribute that much to the chorus. And then on the solo organ, we have a set of trombas. We have an 8-foot tromba. And then this tromba also has, like some of the other stops in the solo organ, a 16-foot extension rank. So here are those two together. And if you put the solo to great super coupler on, you can get the full chorus from that. And then in the pedal, we have a nice set of chorus reeds. We have a basically, well, it's somewhat like the principals in that we have a one set and then another set. The first set we have is the trombone. And that goes with a nice 8-foot trumpet. And a 4-foot clarion, which was actually revoiced more recently. It was originally a 4-foot shawm that was added by Harrison and Harrison, and it was revoiced later into a 4-foot clarion. Here are those three stops together. So if that weren't enough, you have your you also have your Ophicleide bombard unit, which is comprised of a 16-foot Ophicleide, and a 32-foot bombard. Really underpins the full organ nicely. So here are all 5 of those pedal reeds. So there are 2 stops left we haven't heard. And one of them is a percussion stop. The solo organ has this very interesting little Glockenspiel. And it's actually got a dual personality, I kind of think, because if you listen to it in its top octave, it really sounds like a Glockenspiel. But if you listen to it down in its lower octave, it sounds more like a traditional organ harp. somewhat limited in its use just because of its location in the organ, but it's kind of an interesting little novelty. And finally, we have the solo tuba. The solo tuba is not located with the solo organ. It actually sits on the very top of the organ case, where it can project out into the nave of the church. Stop can soar nicely over the rest of the organ. Does it for our little tour of the Hereford organ. It's a very good sample set. I really enjoy playing on it, and I'm sure you've heard some of my other videos where I have played pieces using it. So I hope this gives you a little indication of what it sounds like, and I certainly recommend it to you if you're interested in this type of organ. It's a very nicely done sample set. So, until later, this is Will Scarboro.